Welcome. I am your host, Ramonda Jan, the founder of Women Thrive Media, visibility expert, and inspirational speaker. I founded this global community for women so every woman who is starting or running a business can feel like she has found a place to belong. So every woman is empowered to use her voice and share her message with the world. Hi, and welcome to today's podcast episode. Today's guest is Vicky Midwood. Today we're talking about your addiction does not need to run the show. And my guest is an expert and actually an addictions eliminator. Hi, Vicky. Good to have you on the show today.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. Can't wait to speak to you about this.
Yes, me too. Where are you joining us from today?
I'm in North London today. Yeah, in the UK.
Beautiful. Well, today we are talking about your addictions does not need to run a show, whether they are big addictions, whether they are just something small that actually constantly tapping at you and does not let you have freedom. Today's episode is going to be covering just some of the tips and advice of how to overcome addictions, maybe, and seek out for help if you need. So my guest today is Vicky Midwood, aka the Addictions Eliminator, an integrative health, nutrition, and lifestyle coach who has been in fitness and wellness world for over 30 years. She's a creator of Blast Method to create great health, reduce anxiety, and eliminate compulsion to self-sabotage with food, alcohol, or both. She helps smart, successful business owners and professionals reconnect to themselves so they can be fully present and living life that they love. And of course, Vicky is actually one of our authors for the Women Thrive book, Inspiring True Stories of Women Overcoming Adversity. So Vicky, today's conversation is going to be powerful. Well, welcome.
Thank you. I'm so excited about it.
Me too. And why is it such an important topic to be discussing right now where we are?
I think addiction, that word has so many connotations for people and usually negative. And my kind of powerful desire is for us eventually to stop looking down upon addiction as something bad or wrong or something terrible, and maybe think that if we are addicted in any way to something, that maybe there's something wrong with us, because we're not broken and there's nothing wrong. It's usually a response to a way that you feel, or it's a way of helping you to just feel more comfortable, less anxious, and just a little bit happier in yourself. So, addiction's not a bad thing, but we need to look at it differently and talk about it so much more than we do.
Yeah, I do feel that. And I think this is where a lot of people struggle internally and perhaps don't seek out for help. I want to go into a little bit of your story. What has been your experience and how you got to doing specializing in this line of work?
Well, my story is a very, very long one, but I'm going to try and cut it as short as I can to give you kind of the key things that were profound for me and that maybe people can perhaps resonate with. So I hated the way that I looked when I was a very young person. I knew that I looked different to the rest of my friends. I had ginger hair, I was freckly, I was quite broad, and they all seemed to be very slim and have kind of perfect teeth, and I just felt different. So I wanted to change how I looked from a very early age. And as I got older, that kind of went down the road of me trying to lose weight. And I was rubbish at it. I was rubbish at dieting, and I discovered that I could literally have my cake and eat it. I couldn't not eat, but I did want to lose weight. And so I would read all of the books and all of the information that was around then, obviously pre the internet, about what you should be doing. And it was all about calorie counting and exercising. And I couldn't stick to it. And I felt like a failure. So I discovered that I could make myself sick and get rid of the food. And that then became a habit in itself. And so for me, that was a journey that went for a very long time. And to be quite honest, it didn't work a lot of the time. It didn't help me to lose the weight. I still was very unhappy in how I looked. And that's when I picked up alcohol, because I recognized that with alcohol, I could feel more confident. I wasn't fully focused all of the time on how I looked, what I was eating, what I wasn't eating, what people were thinking about me. And it just allowed me to be a little bit more extrovert and a little bit more outgoing. And I thought that it was great. I loved it. And that's how I stayed for a long time, until I recognized that I thought I was in control of it, but it became my controller. And when I wanted to try and change things and cut down or stop drinking totally, I recognized I couldn't do that. And I didn't want to go and get help. The only thing that I knew about addiction was that it was a bad thing, that you must be a bit stupid, that there's something wrong with you, that you're flawed in some way, and you should be able to sort it out for yourself. Just get a grip, use willpower. And that's why it took me decades to get help. And that's why I feel so driven to help people to find out that you don't need to wait for decades, and you don't have to either just go to your GP or go somewhere like Alcoholics Anonymous or Overeaters Anonymous. There are other options, and there's a lot you can do to help yourself.
Wow. Oh my God. It makes me want to cry hearing the story, just imagining how many other people perhaps been through this self-sabotage cycle or have had to really harm themselves with food or alcohol to, or drugs, matter of fact, to basically overcome these emotions. What sort of things have you discovered further down the line in your line of work, in terms of what you specialize in and the tools that you have learned along the way?
I think the biggest thing for me was understanding that I needed to stop separating my body and how I looked from who I was as a person. Because I kind of literally chopped myself off at the head. I believed that I was intelligent, and that in a lot of ways, I always wanted to be better than other people. I wanted to be smarter. I wanted to be the one who knew more stuff. I recognized that I was quite arrogant and I was quite grandiose in my thinking. And yet, when it came to my body, I was totally out of touch with it. I was punishing it. I was hammering it, abusing laxatives, and making myself miserable with the words that I used in my head about how I looked. And over the years, I found that that's the common denominator for so many people with addiction issues. We want to be perfect. We don't want to feel less than. We're high achievers with massively high expectations of ourselves, but also of others. And that can cause big problems in how we feel and think about where we fit in society. And people pleasing is something that I didn't recognize initially was massive for me. And the more I tried to please other people, and if it didn't work, the worse I felt about myself, the more I would turn to food or alcohol to just help me feel better, or better still, to just black out so I didn't have to think and feel anything. And that's a familiar tale that I hear from just about all of my clients, not necessarily all of those things, but definitely some of them.
Yeah, and it's so hard to reach out for help. Why do people struggle to reach out for help?
I think overriding, it's the fear that if they reach out for help, they won't be able to do it, and that they will be judged, that it's going to be hard, and that they're going to be judged. And the fear of failure is powerful, especially if they've tried to do it on their own and they've not been able to. So there's this sense of there's something wrong with me, nothing works, I can't do it. And so if they reach out and speak to me, then that is going on in the back of their head. Is this another thing that you're going to be wasting your money on? You won't be able to stick to it. You never have before. Those old stories of the past come up, and it's easier not to make the effort than to fail again. And that I really understand. It takes a leap of faith, and I think the right person to help you to believe that just there's a tiny bit of belief that you can possibly maybe just do it. And that's all you do need, is that can possibly maybe just, because that little tiny modicum of belief that's just a little bit more than perhaps you've had before could just be the catalyst. And it was for me, that pushed you and allows you to just reach out and have a conversation and get honest.
Yeah.
Just go, this is where I'm at, help.
That's right. It's a little small step, right, to
Tiny.
making a big change.
Yeah.
One is, I guess, recognizing that this should and cannot no longer run the show. As today we're talking about how to overcome addiction and not let that to be the ruler of your life. And sometimes, you know, we have gone a particular path for so long that sometimes you just have to recognize that, you know what, I need to be in control. And just having that one conversation with someone who's non-judgmental. And I'm believing, you know, going to your doctor or GP, it's pretty daunting to say I'm struggling with addiction than someone who's actually a professional specializing in this.
And also, I mean, we have to be honest, in today's world globally, doctors and GPs just don't have the skill set to be able to help you as the individual. They don't have the time. So all they're going to really be able to do is to signpost you to maybe something like AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, or if you're a binge eater, they might send you to OA. But that's scary, because we've seen it on TV, haven't we? We've got this picture of all of these strangers in a room and you having to stand up and put your hand up and say, my name is blah, 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 and I'm a, and then suddenly you become your addiction. But I'm not an alcoholic. I am a person. I'm Vicky, and I have an issue with alcohol dependence, but it's not who I am. But just the thought of doing that in a room full of strangers, well, I didn't want to do it. I wanted to run a mile. I ended up doing it, but my story is slightly different in that I had no choice. But we have choice. And if I'd have found somebody like me when I needed a little bit more understanding of just what the heck was going on, and for me just to know that there was nothing wrong with me. I come from Yorkshire, and we call a spade, and that means we don't mince our words and make things sound nice. We just say it as it is. And one of the phrases back then was that people who had any issues like addiction were mental. So I would talk to myself and call myself a mental case, you know, and that language is so powerful. But the language that I used to myself about myself was so derogatory, so harmful, and so judgmental. And even just starting to understand that the language that we use, and that we can change it because it's our language and we're in charge of it, just doing that small step can start to help you to feel a little bit better. Because words have, for all of us, different interpretations, don't they, and different meanings. And so if we change the word we choose to use, we can change how we interpret it. Then we can change how we feel about things. And then we can change the actual action steps that we do. And a lot of the time, this stuff is just a habit. It's a habit that we've just created. Nobody sets out to be an addict. Oh, what do you want to do with your life? I want to be a fireman. I want to be a policeman. I want to be an addict, right? Nobody sets out to do that. We find a solution that helps us to feel better. And our brain is brilliant. It remembers. So when we feel that emotion again, it goes, hey, do you know when you felt like this last time and you ate that thing or you had that drink and you felt better? Why don't you go do that again? Because it worked, right? And you just keep on doing it. And so when you recognize that it's just a habit that you've repeated a lot because it did work at one time and now perhaps it's not anymore, and that thing has perhaps become an issue, we can just flip it. We can flip it back again. And once you know the steps to take, it's really not as hard as you think.
Oh my God, Vicky, I'm really in awe of you, your simple approach to, it does not need to be hard. And I know it comes from your own place of
Mm.
getting to that stage where it becomes so unbearable. And just saying to all the people listening right now, it does not need to get to that stage of becoming unbearable situation, and you can get the help before it gets to that stage. You don't need to end up in a hospital. You don't need to end up on the floor or sabotaging your life if it's getting in the way of your life right now.
Absolutely.
You shared your very personal story in the Women Thrive book. So we have created a cool third book called Women Thrive, Inspiring True Stories of Women Overcoming Adversity. Give us a little snippet of what the story is about and why people should read it.
So that story it begins really when I just have gotten to the point where I cannot see the way out. And I'm not gonna give it away, because I want the power of the first sentence of my chapter to be powerful. So I'm not going to say what it is, but I had, prior to what I write about then, I had tried to take my own life, and obviously failed. And I had gotten to the point where I was permanently thinking about ways that I could kill myself and my daughter successfully. In other words, I didn't want me to be dead and her survive, because by that point, my family had clearly told me that they would not step in and help. They wanted nothing to do with me. And I didn't want her to die and me to survive, because there's no way I would have been able to live with that. So I was actually at that point in my life where I was thinking about crashing the car, driving down the motorway, us both jumping off onto the tube lines. And those were the thoughts that were going through my head. So that's where my chapter starts. That's the headspace that I was in. And I then talk about what happened for me when circumstances happened and the universe stepped in and I ended up in rehab. If that hadn't have happened to me, I honestly don't know where I'd be or where my daughter would be right now. I don't want to even go there. Yeah. But I explain that my fears and my concerns about rehab were really pushed to one side, because it wasn't anything as scary as I thought it was going to be. And it allowed me space, and it allowed me to recognize, and I talk about this, and it allowed me to recognize who I actually was. And I talk about it in my chapter, that I really didn't know. I did not know who I was at all. I was so many people all of the time. I wore so many masks. And I think as women and as mothers and as daughters and, and as wives, because I've had two husbands, we do kind of do that. But then we don't genuinely know who we are. And what I realized is that I'd never known who I was. I'd been doing it since I was a kid, to stop violence between my parents and to help to run the house when my mum wasn't able to. And so there was a lot of realizations there, but I was in a safe space and it was okay. And I was also really fortunate, as I explain in the book, that the person who was running the rehab recognized that if I went back to the circumstances and the person I was living with at the time, I would probably relapse. And because I was pretty close to my body completely shutting down when I ended up in rehab, because I did a crazy thing, not to be recommended. Please don't try this at home. I completely stopped drinking, right? Which is a crazy thing to do. But that's why I kind of preempted the state of mind that I was in. I kind of gotten to that point when I kind of didn't care anymore what happened to me. And so I just stopped. I stopped drinking, and my blood pressure was literally through the floor. My heart rate was crazy low, and they weren't sure whether I'd be brain damaged. So when he said, we recommend you don't go home because physically, if you relapse, don't think your body can cope with it, I ended up going to South Africa. And that for me was a point of an aha moment, thanks to one particular therapist who was really excited that I was interested in understanding how the brain and the body connected and the whole addiction process. I wanted to know the science of it. I wanted to know the neurology of it. I wanted to know what was going on, because I knew that it was nothing to do with willpower, but I wanted to find out more. And that was the catalyst to then me coming back and going, okay, what do I do now? And that's what I talk about. And it allowed me to recognize I didn't have to follow a certain path. And in the book, I talk about me going back and studying. I hadn't gone to university. I'd met a guy to get out of my family situation and started working when I was 17, 18. So I didn't go to uni. So I went back to uni, and that got me into learning. And I went on to learn to become a teacher in higher education. But then I thought, you know what? I'm going to do my addiction psychology masters as well. Why not? And I did that. And that was another learning curve that I talk about in the book, in that arena at the time. And I'm so grateful to say it's changing now, but it's blooming slow. But I recognized that the therapists, the psychologists, they didn't want to listen to what I had to say about the body connection. And the whole gut brain axis, quite new, talking a while ago now. And they just poo-pooed the fact that I recognized my addictions, particularly with food, and how my body responded to alcohol was very much physiological as well as emotional and psychological and neurological. And there's some genetic stuff in there too. And it was all about theories and mental health and talking about it. And so that's when I recognized that it was hacking me off. I wanted to find my way of doing it and just more in depth about how nutrition plays a role, about how sleep plays a role, about blood sugar balance, and all of this stuff that they were not talking about, all of the lifestyle stuff that, as a fitness instructor, I'd done the basics, but I just wanted to know more. So I became somebody who just was like permanently studying, and I still am, because I love learning, and we never stop. We never stop learning more about the brain, more about the body, and and bacteria and mold and stuff. And it sounds gross, but it really excites me to understand that not only can we help ourselves manage this stuff, but it doesn't have to be medication based. We can use natural stuff that the universe and nature has provided for us. And so for me, this is what I try and explain to people. Addiction doesn't have to run the show, and getting free of addiction can actually be really quite fun. It can be a whole journey of discovering so much that oftentimes you never even knew existed. And that leaves you in a space where you recognize what it feels like to be free of this constant chatter in your head and constantly being aware of what am I eating, what am I drinking, what do I look like, what are people going to think of me, and you can just let all of that go.
Yeah. Wow. So powerful and so beautifully said that it can really, you can change some things in your life. And your story is a testament that you've gone the full length from being, starting slow, how much it has affected all areas of your life. And it's so scary to think you could have taken your life away. And here you are today, having learned so much, practiced so much in this space, and now helping others overcome addictions and deal with their not only just emotional and physical being. And we met in London a couple months ago, and I saw you and I was like, oh my God, it's like you look so healthy, so happy, so vibrant.
Oh, thank you.
It's phenomenal. It's phenomenal what your health and just feeling good within yourself can do for you as a person, for your self-esteem, for your presence, for your relationships. Every part of your life changes with it.
And I think for me, and it's important for those who are concerned, who food and body image and size is an issue, because in society it's just massive, isn't it? I feel good, and it's nothing to do with my clothes size, and it's nothing to do with my weight. And I do manage, because of the way that I really did hammer and punish my body. I have had a heart attack, and I do have 2 autoimmune issues that are all linked to my bulimia, my overindulgence in laxatives, and of course the alcohol. And so I manage those symptoms, but this is again part of the learning. I've learned to manage them in a way that works for me. And this is the important thing. There is no one size fits all when it comes to addiction. It's really personal, and it's about your story. And this is why it doesn't have to be hard. It can be really fun when you give yourself permission to actually find out what works for you. And we can take off the labels, and we can just start to discover just who am I and what do I really love.
Yeah.
That's what it's about.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Vicky. And how do people get in touch with you if they wanted to seek out for help, or just they read your chapter, they listen to your podcast and feel inspired by your story?
So yes, so there's a number of ways. The quickest way is to jump onto the website and just click the button that says book a call. If you want to get in touch with me, I'm on Instagram. It's Vicky_Go Figure Coaching on Instagram. And if you just send me a message, I'll respond to that. Facebook, obviously, Vicky Midwood. And you can also listen to my podcast, which is now on YouTube as well, which is great because you can leave comments. So if you do watch it on YouTube, you can leave a comment on there. So if you don't want to reach out for a call or personally message me, you just want to keep it a little bit anonymous, you can kind of reach out through the back door that way.
Yeah. And so what is the name of your website, and what's the name of your podcast?
The website is vickymidwood.com, and the podcast is called Raw Chatter.
Raw Chatter. Amazing. Thank you so much. Before we leave today, any last parting thoughts?
I just want to say, if you do feel that food or alcohol, anxiety, body weight, or your image is overtaking your life, you can let it go, and you will find that life is so much more fun without it.
Thank you so, so much. For those of you listening to this episode today, I hope you have enjoyed our conversation with Vicky today. All the links that you need to get in touch with Vicky and follow her podcast are in the show notes below. So please do make sure you follow those links. If you feel like someone perhaps needs this message right now, someone needs to hear these words and Vicky's advice, please share it widely. You may not even know someone is struggling with this issue in your very close circle, maybe in your friend circle, in your social media. So I would be so, so grateful if you could share this episode. And of course, we have 8 amazing authors in the book. So go ahead and grab your copy for Women Thrive book, Inspiring True Stories of Women Overcoming Adversity. I'm so excited about this book because every single woman have written a personal chapter, shared their story in hopes of helping someone else. So this is the stories of us women overcoming adversities and finding a way to thrive in life. And it has been absolute pleasure and inspiration to work with you, Vicky.
Thank you so much. It's been a delight, and I do hope that people have found this helpful in any way, shape or form. Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you all for listening today, and we look forward to seeing you on another episode. Thanks for now. Bye-bye. Did you enjoy this episode? Share it with the world. Make sure to also leave a review and subscribe for future episodes.